बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। आज हम लिखेंगे एडिटोरियल का पैसेज नंबर 219। तो रेडी। After the Biden administration announced its intention to withdraw all forces from Afghanistan while continuing to assist Ashraf Ghani's government, there was a veritable hailstorm of articles in the US, Europe and South Asia, with Japan and Southeast Asia contributing their might, questioning the withdrawal full stop. However, they considered for the most part that this was necessary to implement the agreement the Trump administration had reached with the Afghan Taliban in February 2020, full stop, new para. There was a criticism of the fact that the Afghan government had not been consulted and yet was required, as part of the US Taliban agreement, to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners, full stop. Many reports asserted that those released included not only the Taliban but also adherents of Al-Qaeda and, most significantly, of the Islamic State groups, Khorasan chapter, full stop. This reportage was, however, dwarfed by what followed the unexpected collapse of Ghani's government and the horrific scenes at Kabul airport, full stop. New para. There was an avalanche of reports, with everybody and his uncle, many with little knowledge of Afghan beyond such cliches such as the graveyard of empires and fiercely independent Afghans, coming down heavily on the intel and military failures that reminded furious observers of the ignominious departure of American helicopters from Saigon in 1975, full stop. President Joe Biden and his team tried to put the best possible construct on this, reminding a skeptical audience that this was the largest airlift operation since the airlift to Berlin in 1951, and that much hard work by all branches of the US administration and the unstinted cooperation of allies around the world had gone into making this possible, full stop. New para. In Pakistan, much was made of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's failure to include Pakistan on the list of countries thanked for their efforts, full stop. Belatedly, a briefing note attributed to the State Department spokesperson listed Pakistan as among the countries that facilitated the evacuation from Afghanistan, full stop. This was apparently a reference to the PIA flights to Kabul and the sensitive personnel IMF, World Bank, Italian diplomats, etc., who were brought to Islamabad, full stop. More of this sort of assistance to the international community is likely to follow, full stop. But that will not stop the effort to scapegoat Pakistan, despite some discerning commentators pointing out that Pakistan's own security would be jeopardized if the Taliban could not exercise full control over Afghanistan and curb the excesses of their more rustic adherents, that Pakistan had repeatedly warned successive US administrations through the now famous three, or was it four question mark. Kayani notes that it was following the wrong policy in Afghanistan, and that Pakistan would be hedging its bets, full stop. On a personal note, I was a participant in some of the many internal discussions General Ashfaq Kayani held and contributed to the substance and framing of these notes. So, what other conclusions can one draw from a perusal of the more than 350 articles from all over that one has downloaded? Question mark. First, Biden may be right in saying nobody expected the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces to collapse so quickly, but he is held responsible for the chaos, full stop. According to an ABC Washington Post poll, he now has a negative rating with 44% saying they approve of how he is handling his job, while 51% disapprove, full stop. In late June, the numbers were almost reserved, with 50% supporting and 42% disapproving, full stop. It is likely, though not necessarily certain, that those Democratic congressmen who depend on presidential support may find it difficult to win re-election in 2022, despite the fact that it was a Republican president that laid the foundation for the debacle, full stop. New paragraph. Biden is partly satisfying his critics by saying it will be a long time before he recognizes the Taliban, but he has at the same time taken the sensible step of issuing a license whereby NGOs seeking to assist the Afghan people will not be subject to sanctions, full stop. Quite rightly, he does not want the Afghan people to suffer even while not directly assisting the Taliban, full stop. Former Assistant Secretary of State Richard Booker's remarks bears repetition. You can't win when you are fighting people for their own villages and their own territory, full stop. Those were lessons we thought we learned in Vietnam, full stop, and yet 30 or 40 years later, we end up in Afghanistan repeating the same mistakes, full stop. New para. Second, facts, not speculation about the grim economic situation, full stop. Afghanistan ranks as one of the most at risk, fragile economies in the world, full stop. Poverty is endemic, as is underdevelopment, because of long-term, high intensity conflict, says the World Bank. 90% of Afghanistan's population lived on less than $2 a day, and Kabul, which received $4.2 billion in 2019, will receive none this year unless US purse strings are loosened, or at least the bar on giving a Taliban government access to Afghan monies under US control is lifted, full stop. Prior to the current unrest, some 3.5 million people were already forcibly displaced within the country's borders, full stop. Recent estimates suggest that another 550,000 have been displaced since the start of 2021, 80% of them women and children, full stop. New para, the UN representative in Afghanistan has made the most sensible suggestion about what needs to be done, full stop. First, he asked for the quick replenishment of food stocks, which would be possible if his appeal for $1.3 billion was fully met instead of being stuck at $400 million received so far, full stop. His assessment is that on women's rights, the picture is mixed, with the Taliban yielding ground where there is local resistance, full stop. UN national staff and their dependents, total some 16,000, full stop. It would make sense for the Taliban to be persuaded by the regional countries to let the UN and its valiant Secretary General, with tons of Afghan experience in his previous stints in Afghanistan, be responsible for the procurement and disbursal of economic assistance, full stop. New para. Later, perhaps one can pen another article on what Pakistan's own pragmatic position should be while recognizing the pitfalls, full stop. Meanwhile, one can say that the announcement of the caretaker government by the Taliban on September 7 does not alter what I believe to be the best way of resolving the economic crisis in Afghanistan, full stop.